Okay, everyone, it looks like it's time to begin. Welcome to Music, Murals and Mushrooms, exploring the Bloch Family Legacy. My name is Jeffrey Syrop. I'm the executive director here for the Lincoln County Historical Society, and we're so happy to have you here. We have a wonderful program lined up for you, brought to you by the Ernest Bloch Legacy Committee, which is a committee formed by the Lincoln County Historical Society. Be sure to stick around after the performance. We're going to have mushroom-themed treats and coffee in the room, the new multipurpose room directly adjacent to the theater. And just to let you know, restrooms are on this level straight down the hall, so you don't have to go back upstairs. If you haven't picked up a program or some of the handouts, now's a good time to do so in the back of the room there. And if you enjoy our programs and exhibits, please consider becoming a member of the Historical Society or making a contribution. That just allows us to keep these programs free and give everyone access to cultural heritage. So now I'd like to introduce our new Ernest Bloch Legacy Committee Flamekeeper, who is wearing many hats tonight, including the MC. So Dr. Charmaine Leclair earned a PhD in music history and cello performance from the University of Oregon. She is a member of the Newport Symphony Orchestra, where she's also the office manager. And so I've heard she makes an amazing mushroom soup. So please welcome Dr. Charmaine Leclair.
Bloch Legacy Project is a committee technically based in Newport, but is actually based in cyberspace via Zoom meetings that is made up of family members of the composer, volunteer participants from here in Lincoln County, Adam Flatt, the music director of the Newport Symphony, and Adam sent an email conveying his best wishes to everyone here today. We have Alexander Knapp, who is the president of the International Ernest Bloch Society, and other members from the society, which is based in London, England. We have Eric Johnson, who is a curator of Ernest Bloch's photographs, and he is also a photographer of the Bloch family. And last but not least, the staff and board members of the Lincoln County Historical Society. The Ernest Bloch Legacy Project has been active in Newport in some form or another since 1989. The year 1989 is when both the Newport Symphony and the Ernest Bloch Music Festival were incorporated. Both of these organizations were the brainchild of the conductor Anthony Amore, who got together with David Ogden Stiers and a few other people and created these two organizations. The first symphony concert, then under the original name of the Yaquina Chamber Orchestra, was held in February of 1990, conducted by Tony Amore. And then a few months later, in July of 1990, was the inaugural Ernest Bloch Music Festival. It was a week-long event, and it was a huge production. There were 3 orchestra concerts, all conducted by Tony Amore, 4 chamber recitals, several lectures, and a composer symposium. The Yaquina Chamber Orchestra, with Tony Amore conducting, was the core ensemble, with added import musicians from around Oregon and other states. The original board of directors of the Ernest Bloch Music Festival included, among others, the 3 children of Ernest Bloch, Ivan, Lucienne, and Suzanne, the namesake grandson, Ernie Bloch II, with his wife, Ellen, and several honorary board members, including Leonard Bernstein, Yehudi Menuhin, Marin Alsop, the governor of the state of Oregon, the Oregon U.S. Senators, and the mayor of Newport. And there are a few people here today who have been part of the Ernest Bloch Legacy Project since the very beginning in 1989. On the original board of directors for both the symphony and the Ernest Bloch Music Festival is my mother, Sandy Rumagoo. Where is she? There she is. Also here today is Paul Brookhiser. He was an original board member and a generous supporter. Thank you, Paul. I can't remember if I saw Charlotte Denote. Yay, there she is. So she's been here since the beginning. Thank you. And the man in charge of the festival's Composer Symposium for the first several years is Greg Steinke. Is he here? No? Oh, man. I was going to give him a big... Anyway, he was in charge of the Composer Symposium, and he even contributed his own compositions because he is a composer and oboist, and he also conducted some of them. So thank you all for being part of the Legacy Project for 36 years. Yay! So what happened with the passage of time is that the symphony grew from being the Yaquina Chamber Orchestra to being renamed the Yaquina Orchestra, and then in 2004, it was renamed again to be the Newport Symphony Orchestra. Meanwhile, with the members of the Bloch family either dying, retiring, or moving away, coupled with the enormous effort required of the small town of Newport to produce, the music festival became too taxing on the volunteers, and so over time, the week-long festival decreased in size until it became what it is today, a modest afternoon performance symposium. Now with the great-grandchildren of the composer, Lucienne and Suzanne, stepping up to represent the Bloch family. Now, in the year 2000, what happened? Frank Geltner moved to town, and he became the director of the Oregon Coast Council for the Arts, the job that Jason Holland has now. Frank learned about Ernest Bloch at this time. Now, for reasons unknown to man or God, he became the #1 groupie of Ernest Bloch on the entire planet. With unmatched enthusiasm and dedication, Frank has been a madman bearing the torch for the Ernest Bloch Legacy Project. And in the 25 years since he's arrived in Newport, Frank has spearheaded several huge projects. This is not a complete list. I'm just going to do the highlights. He got a grant from the Oregon Arts Commission and had Nancy Steinberg write the text, and he came up with this booklet, which is a fantastic, everything you wanted to know about Ernest Bloch, but were afraid to ask, all in one booklet. He was instrumental in creating and maintaining the Ernest Bloch website. He was a huge person for the Memorial Wayside Park, which is over by Roby's Furniture. If you've never been there, you go to the lighthouse at Equin ahead. There's Roby's Furniture at the stoplight, there's traffic light, and the Wayside Memorial is like an extension of that parking lot for Roby's Furniture, and it's a stone's throw away from the Ernest Bloch house on Agate Beach. Frank also started the process, and I have a feeling I'm going to be the one to complete the process for getting Ernest Bloch's image on a U.S. postage stamp. He was instrumental in bringing the International Society on board with us with Alexander Knapp. He has spearheaded an event for the 150th anniversary of Bloch's birth for the year 2030. And it was Frank's foresight that he approached the Lincoln County Historical Society to see if they would take on the project under their auspices. And they agreed to do that. And so that's why we're able to be here in this lovely venue. And I also want to give Frank a shout out for donating this beautiful piano to the Doerfler. Yay! But since Frank's decided to retire and go to Panama and enjoy some fun in the sun, he said, Charmaine, can you help me out here? Can you take over this? And I said, of course, but only if I get can congratulate you and thank you properly. So we have gotten you a little gift, and I would like Bud Shoemake to come here and present you with a token of our appreciation.
You're a tough act to follow. Okay, Frank, come on down. And Frank also became a member of the board of the Lincoln County Historical Society, just to bend all our arms. No, I grew to appreciate him more and more, and a little gift for you as a flame keeper.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah,
Much appreciated.
and we appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
At this time, I am very happy to introduce you to Lucienne Allen. She is the great-granddaughter of Ernest Bloch and runs Old Stage Studio, a business dedicated to the preservation and promotion of her namesake grandmother, Lucienne Bloch. She drove all the way from California to be here today, so please let's give her a warm welcome.
Hi. Okay. This presentation is a kind of guided walk through one side of my family, the Bloch side. We'll start with my great-great-grandparents, Maurice and Sophie, and follow their son Ernest, my great-grandfather, as he grows into the composer many of you know and the father of 3 very different children, including my grandmother. It's a condensed story that weaves through music, travel, art, and a few strong personalities. At the age of 40, Meyer Bloch married Sophie Braunschweig, a warm, sociable woman nearly 17 years his junior. Having settled in Switzerland years earlier, Meyer had begun adapting to his new francophone surroundings, even changing his German Jewish name to the more French-sounding Maurice. With Sophie's help and the support of 10 or more employees, Maurice ran a shop selling Swiss souvenirs and tourist gifts. Folk wood carvings, reproductions of objets d'art, jewelry, metalware, stones from the Alps, music boxes, cuckoo clocks, handbags, and other leather goods. Sophie and Maurice had 3 children, Arnold, Louise, and Ernest. Arnold was a bright and promising child, and his parents placed great hopes in him. Louise, affectionately known as Loulette, was their spirited daughter. But tragedy struck when Arnold died from diphtheria at just over 4 years old, leaving his parents devastated. 2.5 years later, on July 24th, 1880, Ernest was born. Maurice and Sophie sensed in Ernest a reincarnation of Arnold. This, coupled with their fear that he might suffer the same fate, led Sophie to lavish extreme attention on him. Her overprotectiveness and her tendency to indulge his whims planted in him the seeds of egocentricity. Yet from her, he also absorbed a deep sense of optimism, serenity, and spirituality, all qualities that were integral to her nature. Maurice's more tormented disposition left its mark as well, though the 48-year age gap between father and son meant their contact was less frequent and immediate. The conflicting temperaments Ernest inherited from his parents became central to his character from an early age. His tantrums were often followed by long, wistful silences, moments when he would retreat inward, absorbed in his own thoughts and meditations. From the very beginning, Ernest was intense, sensitive, and deeply curious. He once asked his mother, "Who is God? Where is God? Does God have a shape?" And she told him, "God has no shape, no form. We cannot see him just as we do not see air. He is in everything, everywhere, in the stars, in the trees, within you." That stayed with him. Even as a child, Ernest was reaching for something larger, something invisible but deeply present. That became the heart of his music. Neither of Ernest's parents were musical, but his passion was undeniable. He persuaded his father to let him learn the violin, and from the start, his progress was extraordinary. A true prodigy, within 2 years, he had composed numerous pieces for the violin and advanced so quickly as a performer that at age 11, he gave a public recital in Geneva. His considerable talent was immediately recognized. By then, Ernest had already made a solemn vow to become a composer. He didn't just whisper it to himself. He wrote it down, carried the note deep into the woods, buried it under a mound of stones, and built a bonfire over it. That's how seriously he took his calling, even as a child. Whether Ernest saw music as a spiritual destiny or a means of escaping the constrained life his parents envisioned for him, or both, his exceptional talent eventually led Maurice and Sophie to accept the reality of his path. Bloch studied all over Europe: Geneva, Brussels, Frankfurt, Munich, Paris. He trained as a violinist under Eugene Issei, but his voice kept pulling him back to composition. That was his true language. Later in life, he was known for destroying early compositions that didn't feel authentic to him. He held himself to impossible standards and was obsessed not with success, but with a fierce commitment to integrity in his music. That devotion to honesty and sincerity stayed with him forever. Even in his earliest music, you can hear it. Spiritual searching, moral weight, questions of identity. He wasn't trying to write something impressive. He was writing something genuine, to explore what it meant to be human. That thread, introspection and emotional truth, runs through all of his work. In 1904, Ernest married Marguerite Elisabetta Augustina Schneider, a German pianist. She was quiet, thoughtful, and a bit reserved. By 1909, Ernest and Marguerite had 3 children, Yvonne, Suzanne, and Lucienne, my grandmother. Each of them was unique, and Ernest's connection to each child reflected their distinct gifts. Yvonne, the eldest and only son, was imaginative and inquisitive. His relationship to his father, shared through long hikes, mushroom foraging, and other outdoor activities, nurtured a deep curiosity and love for the natural world. That connection laid the foundation for his future as an engineer and conservationist, and eventually led to his work with the Bonneville Power Administration in Portland, Oregon. Suzanne showed an early interest in music. She became a trailblazer in the field of Renaissance music, teaching recorder, lute, and composition for over 4 decades at the Juilliard School in New York. She co-founded the Lute Society of America, and I fondly remember her teaching me how to play the recorder in my grandmother's kitchen. And Lucienne, the youngest, was the artist, determined, bold, and visually gifted. She mastered a wide range of media, including fresco murals, mosaics, glass figurines, wood sculptures, children's book illustrations, lithographs, woodblock cuts, portraits, and egg tempera. She was named after her godmother, Ernest's dear friend, the great soprano Lucienne Breval, who sang the lead in his only opera, Macbeth. The entire family was artistic, but also down to earth and oftentimes chaotic. There were passionate arguments, deep bonds, and plenty of laughter, often sparked by dirty jokes. And the house wasn't just musical, it was alive with creativity, debate, grief, devotion, and a constant reach towards something deeper. The family moved to the United States from Switzerland, first to New York City, and a few years later to Cleveland, Ohio, when Ernest became the first musical director at the Cleveland Institute of Music. The mission, proclaimed by Bloch, relayed the forethought that has guided the Institute throughout its history. Musical education, in addition to the thorough study of technique, ought, above all else, to develop qualities of appreciation, judgment, and taste, and to stimulate understanding and love of music. In 1925, Bloch sent his 2 daughters, then 16 and 18, along with their mother to Paris to continue their studies in the arts. Suzanne studied with Nadia Boulanger, while Lucienne studied sculpture with Antoine Bourdelle and painting with André Lotte at the Beaux-Arts. Meanwhile, Bloch moved to San Francisco and served as director of the Conservatory of Music for the next 5 years. During his time in San Francisco, Bloch composed a bold new work called America, an Epic Rhapsody. He entered it into a prestigious nationwide competition, and out of over 500 submissions, his piece was awarded first prize. It premiered in 1928 with simultaneous performances in 5 American cities and was broadcast across the country. This sketch was made by his friend, artist Maynard Dixon. It shows how Cleveland was a bit of a thorn in his side, New York was a rock, and San Francisco, his chunk of gold. Bloch's intent was to capture the essence of America's past, present, and future through this expansive musical narrative. He later said he felt like he had poured his soul into that music, his hopes, his questions, and his conflicted love for his adopted country. In 1930, Bloch returned to Europe to work on Avodath HaKodesh, or Sacred Service. It was one of his most ambitious spiritual works, blending Hebrew liturgy with profound musical introspection. Outside of music, Ernest was a relentless observer of the world. He walked, read philosophy, copied long quotes into notebooks. He collected mushrooms, agates, and books, and he wrote thousands of letters. And he took photographs. A lot of photographs. After his death, a friend of the Bloch children, famed photographer Ansel Adams, helped them place their father's thousands of negatives at the Center for Creative Photography in Tucson, Arizona. Among his many photos are a surprising number of self-portraits. Bloch was, in many ways, an early selfie master, using a string and a remote shutter to take pictures of himself long before the word even existed. But photography for him wasn't just about vanity. It was about inquiry. He used the camera to study time, especially how things changed over time. He often photographed the same tree in different seasons and light, watching how it responded to the world around it. In 1941, Ernest and Marguerite bought their first home, here in Agate Beach. They lived the rest of their years by the sea. Marguerite felt at home in the cool fog on the water, which reminded her of her childhood in Hamburg. Ernest loved the ever-changing mood of the ocean and sky. My grandparents visited often throughout the years with their growing family. And the entire family would gather to celebrate. Ernest Bloch passed away on July 15, 1959. He believed art wasn't something extra or elite. It was essential for everyone. He once said of music, though it applied to all the arts, music, as well as other arts, ought to be an integral part of our lives. Every human being is entitled to share its beauty. I hold it of first importance to write good, genuine music, my music. And that's what you hear when you listen to his work. Not music meant to impress, but music meant to express. Music shaped not just from his mind, but from the wild, searching journey of his life.
so much, Alistair and Diane. That was beautiful. My intention when creating the program for today's symposium was to pique your interest and curiosity not only about Bloch's music, but also about the talents and connections of his wife and children. One of the most intriguing aspects of the Bloch family for me is the large output of murals by Bloch's artist daughter, Lucienne, along with her friendship with the Mexican artist Frida Kahlo. As I was going through the Ernest Bloch Music Festival archives that are stored at the Newport Symphony office, I came across 2 letters that Lucienne Bloch wrote to my mother, Sandy Rimagoo, about a proposal to create a mural for the Newport Aquarium. Here they are, from Lucienne Bloch to Sandy Rimagoo. It was really fun to find these. Sadly, this idea never came to fruition, but it would have been so cool because she had already named it Poems of the Sea. Oh. So I was so thrilled when Lucienne Allen agreed to make a presentation about her family for us to enjoy today, and specifically about the mural and artistic output of Lucienne Bloch. So please welcome back Lucienne Allen.
We've already seen glimpses of my grandmother Lucienne through her family, her camera, and her early influences. She was born on January 5th, 1909 in Geneva, Switzerland, the youngest of Ernest and Marguerite Bloch's 3 children. From the beginning, she stood apart, quiet, focused, always sketching. I grew up next door to her for most of my life until her passing at age 90 in 1999. And that closeness shaped the way I came to understand her, both as an artist and a grandmother. Even early on, her father Ernest seemed to recognize something special. He once wrote, "Lucienne is truly an amazing little person. She has a talent that I think is extraordinary for drawing. She reproduces with astonishing facility all that she finds, copies of Moreau, Michelangelo, Gauguin, and draws from life, all with striking dynamic movement and feeling." He didn't just see talent, he saw vision, and he nurtured it. When Lucienne was 6, she and her sister Suzanne were taking music lessons. Lucienne wrote in the back of her music book, "I would rather do art." Suzanne, hoping to get her in trouble, showed it to their father. But instead of scolding her, Ernest clapped his hands and said, "Good, the world has too many musicians already. If you want to do art, do art. I have many books on the subject. Look at them anytime you want." What many people don't know is that Ernest was also a passionate amateur painter himself. Their creative bond extended into photography. From an early age, Lucienne helped her father develop his photographs. He'd hand her a glass negative on photographic paper, she'd step into the sun and count to 5. Around age 10, he gave her a Kodak Brownie No. 2 box camera. And later, the Leica he gifted her changed everything. She began composing her shots with an artist's eye. Her negatives needed almost no manipulation. The vision was already there. At 15, Lucienne told her father she wanted to leave high school and study art seriously. She applied to the Cleveland Institute of Art, passed the entrance exams, and became their youngest student ever admitted. The next year, Ernest sent his daughters and wife to Paris. Lucienne studied sculpture at the École des Beaux-Arts, dreaming of becoming the second Michelangelo. At 16, while visiting family friends in Florence, she wandered alone through the city and walked into a museum. Overwhelmed by so many masterworks, she grew dizzy and lightheaded. To steady herself, she entered a nearby church. The feeling shifted. The walls were painted with sacred frescoes by Fra Angelico, ancient images that seemed to breathe with the building itself. The art wasn't just on display. It was part of the building, part of the atmosphere. Lucienne later said that this was the moment she understood what art could be. Not just something framed and hung, but something lived with. A few years later, when she shared this with Frank Lloyd Wright, he told her she had great vision, especially for someone so young. She soon moved to the Netherlands and received her first professional commission, designing glass figurines for the Royal Leerdam Glass Factory. She lived with the factory's director and formed lifelong friendships with the family. One of his daughters, Sita, was so dear to her that Lucienne later named her only daughter after her, my mother. In 1931, Lucienne returned to the US and attended a banquet honoring Diego Rivera. He was being celebrated for his upcoming solo show at the newly founded Museum of Modern Art in New York City. When she discovered Rivera was creating true fresco, the same ancient technique she had dreamed about in that Florentine church, she was stunned. After years of thinking frescoes were something of the past, here was somebody boldly reviving them in the present. Eager to show her knowledge, she offered to grind his colors, not knowing if that was even still done by hand. Rivera simply said, "Come tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. When she arrived, there was no machine, just a thick slab of glass and hours of grinding pigment by hand. Her arms ached, but she said she'd never felt more alive. That moment launched her mural career. Lucienne became Rivera's first and only female assistant at the time, working on his MoMA exhibit, the Detroit Institute of the Arts murals, the Rockefeller Center mural, where she captured the only surviving photographs before it was destroyed, and the New Worker School murals, The History of America. She also became close friends with Rivera's wife, Frida Kahlo, and took some of the most iconic photographs of her. The two young artists spent nearly all their free time together. Trading languages, creating art, going to movies, and setting up a kind of informal school in their apartment. In the 1990s, my grandmother and I built a darkroom on her property, and she taught me to print from her original negatives. The photographs we made are now in collections, galleries, and museums around the world. While working with Rivera, Lucienne met Stephen Pope Dimitrov, a Bulgarian immigrant who played the mandolin and was one of Rivera's chief plasterers. He became her creative partner and the love of her life. For over more than 60 years, they created murals across the country, from New York to San Francisco, many as part of the WPA's Federal Art Project. He prepared and plastered the walls, and she brought them to life. Lucienne believed murals should belong to the people, the workers, students, congregants, and passersby who saw them every day. Her first WPA mural was in the recreation room for Black inmates at the Women's House of Detention in Greenwich Village. When she asked the inmates what they wanted to see on the walls, she showed them her lithograph, Negro Playground, created while living in Detroit with Frida and Diego. The inmates loved the idea, but asked that the mural show racial integration. Lucienne believed murals should reflect not just the artist's voice, but the spirit of the community. 2 years later, she painted a major mural at George Washington High School in Manhattan, a celebration of the universality of music. It featured instruments and performers from around the world, Balinese dancers, a jazz ensemble, a multicultural choir. She included a phrase from her father's Symphony America, "Toward higher aims, toward brighter goals, toward brotherhood of nations." There were personal touches too, her sister Suzanne playing the lute, a white-haired conductor modeled after Leopold Stokowski, and in stark contrast, a solitary composer, her father, Ernest, hunched over his piano and tormented manuscript. By 1953, now living in Marin County with 3 children and a portfolio of murals across the country, Lucienne was commissioned by architect Eric Mendelson to paint the interior of a new synagogue he had just designed in Grand Rapids, Michigan. The result was a glowing 1,000-square-foot mural filled with wheat sheaves, grapevines, and Jewish symbols, executed in oil and gold leaf using an innovative silkscreen process. Lucienne continued to create about 1 mural a year from banks and churches to schools, hospitals, libraries, and restaurants. She also continued to teach art to both children and adults. One of her 3-panel bank murals traces the history of San Francisco, from the gold rush to the modern city. By 1963, she and my grandfather had moved to a small coastal town a few hours north of San Francisco. From there, she spent 6 years creating tile mosaic murals for the Greek Orthodox Cathedral in Oakland. She continued to paint and teach fresco classes well into her 80s. And when she wasn't painting, you might find her in the woods, foraging for art supplies or mushrooms, a passion she inherited from her father. For Lucienne, as for Ernest, art and nature were never separate. They were both ways of seeing. Now I'd like to invite you into a visual journey, not just through Lucienne's murals, but through a family archive shaped by both father and daughter. This slideshow includes some of her most vibrant public works, alongside personal photographs taken by Ernest, by my grandmother, and by myself. You'll also see 5 generations of mushroom hunters: Ernest, Lucienne, my mother, myself, my own daughters, proudly sharing our finds. Those forays often ended with a pot of my great-grandmother Marguerite's wild mushroom soup bubbling on the stove. That recipe that's still made today you'll find in your program. This slideshow is set to the first 2 movements of Suite Modal, one of my personal favorites, by my great-grandfather, performed by flutist Laurel Zucker. In these images, murals on walls, mushrooms in hand, you'll find a quiet thread that connects those who came before with those who are still here. A reminder that some legacies are painted in public and others are quietly passed around the table.
I would like to invite John Lavrakis to come to the stage while we set up for the next musical selection.
Thank you. I'm supposed to run cover while they're setting up for this. So. I'm John Lavrakis. I'm here to talk to you about an event that Alex already has spilled the beans on. So mark your calendars in 5 years. We're going to celebrate Ernest Bloch's birthday, and we're going to do it here in Newport. This man from Agate Beach, as he was known, lived just a few blocks, as you know, from 1941 to 1959. The longest he ever lived in his own home was here in Oregon. This event will take place October 29th through November 5th in 2030, so it's in the October time frame. Even though his birthday is in July, it's kind of busy here, and we think we can do better for people having a little bit off season. So it'll be then. You should all have picked up, hopefully, my little news sheet here entitled The International Ernest Bloch Celebration 2030. There's flyers to pick up with more details. Now, this is an international conference. This won't be just locals kind of celebrating Ernest Bloch. We expect people to come from Europe, from Japan, from China to help celebrate Ernest Bloch, who lived here. So watch for it. There'll be his works performed by musicians. We're still working on that, but we got some time. Talks and presentations, as you heard today. A whole week of, well, at least 5 days of celebration of Ernest Bloch. So at this point, we're looking for collaborators, presenters, and musicians that would perform. It's still very early, but if someone's interested, we want to start to fold those ideas in. On this flyer, it tells you more detail. It also lists the program committee. So on it is Alex Knapp, whom you heard, president of the International Ernest Bloch Society, Eric Johnson, who's an expert on Ernest Bloch's photography, Greg Steinke, who is the founder of the Ernest Bloch Composer Symposium and helped co-found the Ernest Bloch Music Festival, Adam Flatt, music director for the Newport Symphony Orchestra, and Frank Geltner, our Ernest Bloch Legacy Flamekeeper Emeritus. Okay, so, and the event is sponsored by the Ernest Bloch 2030 Committee and the Lincoln County Historical Society. If you wish to make contributions, you can make them to the Historical Society, marking them as for the Ernest Bloch 2030 celebration. So it's going to be an exciting event here in Newport, an event where we will play host to people from around the world to celebrate one of our own Ernest Bloch. And so it looks like the team is ready. So without further ado, back to you and Diane and Charmaine.
We will wrap up our time today with an appreciation of Ernest Bloch's passion for wild mushrooms. There is an article from 1987 in the music journal called Opus that critiqued Bloch's violin sonatas. The author started off the music review with the following comment. Ernest Bloch knew mushrooms. He hunted them, collected them, and brought them home for his family's delectation. Once, taking his turn in a succession of speakers at a symposium on music education, he swept aside that topic as agonizingly belabored, and instead, he lectured on the varieties and characteristics of wild mushrooms. They were his passion. I would have loved to have heard that lecture. Bloch foraged mushrooms both in Oregon and in Switzerland, and I was amazed to learn that many of the same species of mushrooms grow in both locations. Chanterelle, oyster, morels, shiitake, maitake, and lion's mane, among others. Now, his wife, Marguerite, like most women of her generation, became very creative in using the massive piles of mushrooms that he brought home. Here you go, dear. I have 15 pounds of mushrooms for you. Oh, thank you. She came up with the most delicious recipe for cream of wild mushroom soup that I have ever tasted. I had a lot of fun cooking it for you to enjoy at our reception in a few moments. I had to be very disciplined to follow the directions exactly in every minute detail because normally I'm a very zen kind of cook where I just sort of throw stuff in. So I was a good girl. I followed it exactly, but the only thing I cheated on was that I did use a food processor. My mother volunteered to be the taste tester, and after finishing the first bowl, she declared, "I feel as if I have just eaten in a 5-star hotel." This recipe has been lovingly handed down in the Bloch family for 5 generations. And as Lucienne pointed out, it is on your program if you would like to take it home and try your hand at it. On a personal note, as a cellist, I have played and performed Bloch's music my entire adult life. If you're a professional cellist, eventually you're going to play Bloch because it's a part of our standard repertoire. So I always felt as if I had a good understanding of him as a person through practicing and performing his music. But honestly, after chopping up and cooking 12 pounds of wild mushrooms, I feel a new and profound level of intimacy with the man. And it has been a pleasure. So if you have time, please join us in the brand newly remodeled multi-purpose room across the hall for our reception. I want to thank everyone for participating, and for Lucienne and Alistair, Diane, and everyone else for participating, and for you to come and enjoy our program. And I look forward to seeing all of you again next July for another presentation from the Ernest Bloch Legacy Project.